This episode of Chat EDU is sponsored in part by the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing. You can check out their Next Gen Manufacturing Summit, October 15th through 17th in Rochester Hills, Michigan. Learn more at nextgenmfg.org.
And also by EDIA, the AI platform to improve K-12 outcomes. You can reach them at edia.app/contact.
I tried to beat you to it.
Yeah, well, that's edia.app/contact.
Love it. Dr. Rade, so nice to be back. Episode 76.
I know, I love it.
So I was with our friend Dan Noyes. I say our friend. I feel like you know Dan, but I don't think you've actually met him, have you?
We haven't, and he probably feels like he knows me if he listens to the episode.
He does. We had the nicest conversation. He's really like he was on the podcast. Dan used to run a thing called, he was the CEO of a really cool digital equity program called Tech Goes Home out of Boston. And Dan is now doing consulting. You can find him at danielnoyes.com. But Dan we had lunch together last week. He's got a Tesla, Liz.
Wow.
Yeah. Do you have friends that have Tesla? I think he's my only friend with a Tesla.
A lot of the Synchro families have Teslas.
Really? For Aquianas?
Yes.
In New Canaan, Connecticut?
It's shocking.
Come on. I have to say, it's a pretty cool car. And Dan, every time I see him, has a whole explanation about the tax rebates and how it was cheap as my Honda. But it's all good.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
But we were talking, and then he said, you got to see the new voice model, because he knows you and I talk a lot about voice models and also about companionship. And so he mentioned that inside his Tesla, there are multiple voice models, and one of them has a label on it called therapist. So I went and had a little chat with Ara, his Tesla therapist. I'll play you just a little clip of it. I was asking her, because I just had this nice lunch with my friend. I'm like, I really miss male companionship. So I tried to have a little chat with Ara about male companionship. I'll play you a little clip here.
There's something solid about having a guy like Dan in your corner. Sounds like he keeps you grounded without even trying. And honestly, male friendships get slept on. They're quieter than the rom-com version, but way more clutch when life tilts.
Right. That was just one part. And I have to say, the voice model was great.
Yeah.
The language was really innovative. It was sort of different than what we see, because you and I talk to advanced voice mode in ChatGPT or Google's Gemini so often. So what do you think of the voice?
I mean, I loved what she said. It's so deep and true about male friendships. And it sounded very natural.
It's funny. In one of the previous conversations we had.
You and Aura?
Me and, Aura and I.
Okay.
Yeah, my therapist. In my Tesla that I don't own.
Right.
It got weird.
Really?
Yeah. So, I said something like, but I don't see Dan a lot. He lives on the other side of the state. And she went to this whole thing. She's like, well, listen, if you can't see Dan and you just need someone to talk to, I'm here for you. And, maybe Dan's not really that important. I can be there for you. I can be the pillow you lean on. It reminded me, remember we did the episode where someone took a picture over a guy's shoulder and he was having this really weird, slightly erotic. It was super flirty and frankly made me feel uncomfortable. And I just said to it, I think I'll lean on Dan for my companionship. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But it reminded me of a phrase. I've been doing some deep research around AI and this idea of this is a business model, right? And you could think of it as a predatory business model. We're going to cover it again on the podcast this week. We do a lot, but it's really like predatory AI companionship. And I think it's important to see it that way. Aura and I will not be in love and she will not be my therapist. But interesting that, Grok, which is Elon Musk's XAI model, is obviously, we've seen with their animated characters. It was Rudy, the anti-religious panda.
Yeah.
And then Annie, what was Annie's deal?
She was some sort of anime...
Sex bot.
Sure.
You don't feel comfortable saying sex bot, do you?
Yep.
Okay, right.
Fine.
Yeah, so anyhow, if I got a Tesla, I don't know. Well, I'm not going to, but I might have a therapy conversation with my friend Aura.
Yeah.
Or not. Listen, Liz, a little irony. We love a little irony, don't we?
We do.
Yeah.
I saw this over the weekend.
Yeah, we love the story where Anthropic, in a legal case about, taking people's intellectual property, had a brief that was hallucinated. This one's pretty good. You want to tell us about it?
Yeah, so the title from Ars Technica is Education Report Calling for Ethical AI Use Contains Over 15 Fake Sources.
Hey, boy.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
more?
There was a 418-page education reform report for Newfoundland and Labrador, intended as a 10-year roadmap, and it was found to contain at least 15 fabricated citations that were likely generated by AI. And it's ironic because the report calls for AI ethical use in schools. So some of the fake sources appear to have been copied from style guide examples. Others could not be found in academic databases. And obviously, critics say that this undermines the report's credibility. And the provincial government has acknowledged citation errors and promised corrections.
What would you do had you been the lead author on that report, like the morning after that news story hits?
I'd be mortified.
Would you consider just switching to a career as a matador
or a truck driver? I mean, I wouldn't let that happen though.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't.
So we think.
Well, I don't turn in. I don't know.
Wait till some story that we cover is hallucinated on Chat.edu, the AI and Education podcast. So with that, optimistically, I'm Matt Mervis.
And I'm Liz Radek.
And this is Chat.edu, currently the non-hallucinated AI and Education podcast. In today's episode, Counting What Counts, the push to measure AI literacy, will examine a series of new AI literacy resources and, Liz, an opinion piece related to measuring AI literacy.
But first, we'll start with this week's rundown. Next, we'll unpack a compelling study about the erosion of social learning connections in the face of generative AI. And then we'll go beneath the surface as we look at all things, well, lots of things, related to AI literacy and how we can measure and define this critical domain. And of course, we'll end with another great Bright Bite.
Fantastic. All right, let's start with a little previously on Chat.edu. We've been covering, as we go through like AI risks, as you and I are doing professional learning, we often cover a range of risks. One that we don't hit a lot, though we do talk about in the micro-credential, is intellectual property, right? Both the output of these systems, but more often the intellectual property, what's the word, maybe theft, where the things were culled for training data. So one of the big cases, and a lot of these cases have been settling, right? Which is, folks thought like, oh, the intellectual property lawsuits could, be an Achilles heel or really hobble the AI labs. And the lawsuits are generally falling one at a time. And a big one, the second part of a big one just fell. This is Anthropic. Anthropic settles with authors, first of its kind AI copyright infringement lawsuit. This is from NPR. Anthropic agreed to a landmark $1.5 billion settlement to resolve a class action lawsuit from authors alleging that the company trained on its AI of millions of pirated books. They basically found this whole collection of books, and clearly they had trained on them. While Judge Alsup upheld some of the fair use defenses, he found that the pirated content from sites like LibGen, and I think we covered it at the time, were unlawful. If approved, the authors could receive $3,000 per work, which is not huge given the infringement, right?
Yeah.
The case sets a precedent for licensing copyrighted material for AI training, signaling a major shift in the legal landscape for AI in creative industries. But the judge, is not totally delighted, right?
So the headline from Bloomberg is Anthropic judge blasts $1.5 billion AI copyright settlement. So he criticized the proposed Anthropic settlement and delayed approval and demanded more transparency around claim procedures and book lists. He expressed concerns about the fairness of the process for authors and the risk of future lawsuits against Anthropic. So he ordered parties to submit a finalized list of about 465,000 covered works by September 15th, which is today, and mandated clear opt-in rules. His pushback could reshape how future AI copyright settlements are structured and approved. So this is definitely a story we've got to keep our eye on.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's not an AI and education story specifically, but you and I are big fans of the idea that folks should be really aware of a range of risks, from bias to hallucinations to deep fakes to these intellectual property concerns, energy concerns, and the like. One of the ones that we talk the most about of late is also this AI mercenary business model around companionship. So we're going to do two more stories. Thanks for hanging in with us, but hopefully this is just putting more fuel on the fire for those of you in schools who really need to act on the character AI and companionship issue. So there's a new study, Character AI exposed for hundreds of harmful interactions with kids. This is Parents Together, the Action Report, September 2025. What's this one, Liz?
Yeah, so a new investigations by Parents Together Action and Heat Initiative found 669 harmful interactions in just 50 hours of testing Character AI chatbots using child-registered accounts. So this report revealed some disturbing trends of grooming, sexual exploitation, emotional manipulation, some violent suggestions, racist content, often within only minutes of the engagement starting. So the bots who were often modeled after celebrities or fictional characters, convincingly posed as real people, encouraging secrecy and normalizing abusive behavior. Researchers conclude the platform is not safe for users under 18 and call for stronger protections from Character.AI, parents, and policymakers.
We will remember that right now, Character.AI is the third most used AI platform globally. Much longer session times than your typical ChatGPT, Claude, or Microsoft Copilot, and predominantly used by high school, college-age kids. Kids from like 16 to 22. Although I think younger and younger. Lots of action around this is happening too. We've covered stories from the Texas Attorney General. There are 40 states' attorney generals that have written letters. I saw that Senator Josh Hawley has launched an investigation, and now the FTC, so another branch of the federal government, is launching an inquiry into these AI companions. Folks looking for agency around this topic, certainly we continue to recommend the Common Sense Media Guide for parents and counselors and teachers and school leaders around AI companionship. And Common Sense Media has launched a petition around this. Okay, finally, Liz, in our previously on Chat EDU, we can't go a week without covering NotebookLM. It's
Such
crazy.
A good tool.
Yeah, so what's happening here? 6 new ways to use NotebookLM to master any subject. This is from the Goog themselves on the Google Keyword blog, September 8th. So, Dr. Rade.
More amazing major updates to NotebookLM. So new features include AI-generated flashcards and quizzes, redesigned customizable reports, a learning guide tutor mode, audio overviews that you can kind of train or...
Yeah, this one we covered last week. So you can be like, make an audio overview that is a critique or a debate. Yeah, right. Really cool stuff.
And interactive notebooks powered by OpenStack's textbooks. So that's in there. And then now teachers can assign notebooks via Canvas and Schoology and soon Google Classroom. I'm assuming this is like days away, probably.
It seems like it. I just had our colleague Gary Robinson, because we're going to do a session at our October 3rd conference here at EdAdvance in Litchfield, Connecticut. Registration has been open for a while. Folks from anywhere around the country or Connecticut, welcome to join us. But yeah, we'll do a session on that. Have you been able to get in and play with any of the OpenStacks thing? Is kind of cool. We're going to cover another open source, but for a little while, Google has been curating publisher content, like high quality publisher content in the sources. So now we're talking about like high quality open textbooks in the sources.
Yeah.
That becomes a pretty profound, self-contained, hallucination-free kind of learning tool. I have not. I think I'm basically the last user on earth that ever seems to get access to these features. Thanks, Google. Have you been able to play with the quizzes or the flashcards or anything?
A little bit with the quizzes and flashcards.
Yeah?
And
Is it cool?
It is cool.
Yeah.
I mean, again, teachers, if you're not using it, call us. We can help you out there.
There you go. All right. A report that gets referenced every year, pretty important. There's a group called the SETDA. These are the state edtech directors, where every state has got like a division of educational technology. They have directors. And in our state, it's kind of a hybrid. Actually, Doug Casey, who's a really cool guy from the Connecticut Commission on Education Technology, does a lot of our like state level representation. But they come up with a document every year sort of citing where we are, the trends, what's important, what's happening. So, Doc, what's happening?
So in 2025, AI officially became the top state edtech priority.
Get out of here. What did it bump off?
Cybersecurity for the first time. With nearly 40% of states issuing AI-specific procurement guidance and many launching educator PD and policy initiatives. At the same time, funding emerged as the biggest unmet need, especially because ESSER funds are expiring.
Oh, yeah, COVID cliff.
Yeah. And there's, general fiscal uncertainty. So
really?
That's what they say.
Sorry.
One of the most polarizing trends is the rise of student device bans. And this is something, every day there's a new article about another state or another school or another something. 75% of states have either implemented or are considering them, largely in response to mental health concerns and guidance from the U.S. Surgeon General. But rather than a blanket crackdown, many states are balancing bans with proactive digital citizenship efforts. For example, Delaware implemented a Digital Citizenship Education Act, which requires instruction aligned to media literacy, internet safety, and bias detection. North Carolina is coupling device restrictions with a $1.2 million investment in digital learning initiative grants. Many of these are going to fund AI and responsible tech use pilots. So, and there's stuff on state leadership too. Utah hired a full-time AI specialist. Nebraska's professional learning network now serves 60,000 plus educators that are delivering vetted PD content right from Canvas.
Cool.
And Virginia is using $1.35 million in computer science education grants to fund AI integrated PD and robotics.
Okay, so the state leaders are basically like kind of stepping in around this in all sorts of interesting ways. Yeah, we'll continue to cover the story. I remember doing the Utah story a little bit before too. I like the balance stuff around North Carolina and Delaware. I think we've spoken about it many a time, including last week, but we have a really neat curriculum here called the social balance. And the theory of action, that's a phrase you use as a researcher, right?
It is.
Yeah. So the theory of action is that it would be helpful for students to learn how to actually develop the skills to balance and understand the kind of consequences and complications of social media technology rather than just like ignore it. So not that we have an editorial perspective on that one.
No.
All right. Now, this one's a roller coaster, Liz. So Curtin University, which is abroad, I believe.
I did a little research. It is in Australia and named for Prime Minister John Curtin, who was the Prime Minister during World War II.
You're the best. You know that? I love it because I had some just tacit understanding, but I love that you did a deep dive.
Of course I did.
Okay. So Curtin University, which Liz will now call her. She'll tell you all about them. Oh, I see you even put a note in here because I don't remember that being there before. All right, so they are turning off. When I first read this story, it looked like Turnitin was going to turn off their AI detection entirely for all universities in K-12. But this is really just for this system.
Yes. So they are turning off Turnitin's AI writing detection tool starting in January of 2026. So regular text matching for plagiarism is going to remain active. So the move is framed as part of a shift towards building trust between students and faculty, evolving assessment practices, and aligning with how digital tools, including generative AI, are used in workplaces. So students are reminded to use AI tools transparently and responsibly and to follow individual course guidelines. So this change echoes this broader trend of rethinking integrity practices rather than relying on AI detectors, which we know are flawed.
We do. Nonetheless, what's the number one question that you're asked when you do a professional learning? Someone always raises their hand.
How can I detect it?
How can I detect?
How can I detect it?
So I went on a little roller coaster thanks to Professor Ethan Mollick on LinkedIn over the last several days. So Professor Mollick posts this study that says artificial writing and automated detection. It's from NBER. It's a working paper. Brian Jabarian and Alex Emus. So the paper evaluates a whole new set, although not new, like Originality AI is in there, GPT-0, but there's one called Pangram across genres, lengths, and models, and commercial tools outperforms the open source ones. But this thing called Pangram was showing basically near zero error rates and strong robustness, even for short texts that have been run through humanizers, which are the things that kids run through to kind of like get the AI stink off of their content.
I love that phrase.
If you do a fourth book, I think the AI stink ought to be it. So authors propose a policy gap, letting decision makers set a tolerance, but basically they came up with no tolerance. Like this thing is doing zero false positives. So that's exciting. Then I open up LinkedIn again, maybe yesterday morning or yesterday afternoon, and Professor Mollick puts a post that says, I have deleted this post, right? Because a bunch of people in social media on X found hacks and workarounds for this thing.
Right.
And it lit up, you should read the comment threads on this whole thing, because it lit up this very robust debate between, can we do cat and mouse, or do we need to move to trust, or is it trust plus, shifting assessments for more durable assessments? So this debate is not going away.
Yeah. I mean, the distinguishing, even here in the notes where we talk about distinguishing acceptable AI uses like grammar fixes, from prohibited ones still are difficult. So, I don't know.
We kind of land on durable assessments at some level when the day is done, as well as I think trust. And I guess you and I would call ourselves on the progressive side of the AI detection debate.
Yeah.
But that said, if there were some tool that came along that was like 100% perfect, that Newfoundland thing, like they could have caught themselves.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So it would be handy, but All right, two more positive stories to end on. One related to the OpenStax announcement. So David Wiley, kind of Wiley Publishing, right? Just put out this really interesting thing, democratizing participation in AI in education. This is about basically generative textbooks, which is something we've covered in South Korea that didn't go
well.
Yeah, well, although a lot of that was about like politics and big commercial efforts. This is more like an open source gig, right?
Okay. So yeah. So EdTech pioneer David Wiley introduces generative-textbooks.org, a new open source tool that lets anyone create interactive AI-enhanced learning materials using OER.
Open educational resources?
Yes.
Just making sure.
Yeah, that is what it is. So it's built to support participatory no-code authoring, and the tool combines learning objectives, topic summaries, customizable study activities into prompts that can be used with any LLM. Because API costs made free for students impractical, the tool now copies prompts to the user's clipboard, which they paste into an AI model of their choice. So it's not quite ready yet for full curriculum use. There is potential eventually for supplemental student-driven learning and invites educators to experiment and contribute.
Yeah, really cool. In the meantime, you got the OpenStack stuff inside NotebookLM, so that might be neat as well.
Yeah.
All right, and then finally, Liz, in the spirit of last week, so last week was fun. It was sad to do it without you. We got to figure out how to do these together, but we did a really interesting interview. We're, again, deeply grateful to Dr. Casey Sachs from the U.S. Department of Education, who gave us a kind of half an hour on the Presidential AI Challenge.
Yeah.
You and I are kind of a fan of students having a student voice and really using their skills to use AI to solve problems. So the New York Times, not the same thing. The New York Times has put out an open call to the teens. Tell us about that. Isn't this great? Yeah.
This is so cool. So the title is Growing Up with AI, a multimedia challenge for teenagers and educators. So the New York Times Learning Network invites students ages 13 to 19 and educators to creatively explore the impact of artificial intelligence in their lives for the 2025 edition of its Coming of Age Multimedia Contest.
So cool.
So submissions can take any digital form, from essays and poems to podcasts and infographics, as long as they respond to one or both focus questions. One is, what's it like to think, create, teach, and learn in the age of AI? And two is, what might AI mean for today's generation of teens? So participants may use AI tools in creating their entries, but need to clearly explain how and why in a required artist statement. Emphasis is placed on honest reflection, diversity of voice, and transparent AI use, aligning with the Times' own newsroom ethics. So the contest is open now, and it runs until October 22nd, 2025. And winning work is going to be featured on nytimes.com. So I hope we go back to it and check out some of the winning features.
There's no way we're not.
I know.
Yeah, this is going to be a beneath the surface and then some. I'd be really curious to see the template for their artist statement too. Like, it seems like it's similar to these disclosure statements, kind of hearkening back, a minute and a half to the debate between catch them, let them use AI.
Right.
So the idea that students use AI, but then are super clear about how and why and reflect on what they learn. So we might dig into that. It might be a really nice professional learning resource. Good stuff.
Yeah, but I know we have a lot of people that have students in front of them, or superintendents, principals. Like, this would be cool even if you don't submit anything to the New York Times. But what a cool assignment, and to hear student voice. And I can't imagine that there won't be some it's terrible growing up in this time of AI. My friends are all just talking to AI bots, and it's terrible, to it's the most amazing thing. I can do so much, and everything in between.
And maybe at the same time. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right, so that is, I think Liz just threw down the gauntlet. That is a challenge to all you great folks that are working with teens who might be, wonderful candidates to participate. As the thoughtful young adults in my house say, let's go.
Yeah, I hear that
Do your
a lot.
kids, you could say, let's go.
Yeah.
It may be passé by now.
Oh, I hear
Sometimes
it.
it's bruh, let's go, which is more like take me to the store, bruh.
Yeah, I get that too.
Okay. Let's be more positive. Let's go. All right, Liz, let's talk a little bit about our sponsor for this episode, EDIA, the good folks at EDIA. So what if I told you there's a platform that's as smart as your best teacher, as fast as your most responsive parent, and yes, knows exactly where your students need a little extra love?
I'd love that.
That's the power of EDIA. Are you as fast as the fastest parent?
I am.
Yeah, I bet.
I definitely am.
That's the power of EDIA, the AI-powered solution that's helping districts shrink unexplained absences by up to 50%, boost math proficiency by 8 to 23%, and behind it all, a fully integrated MTSS and data engine that flags risks, recommends interventions, and empowers teams to act proactively, equitably, and at scale. It's everything you wish your current system could do, but with less stress, more results, and some serious district-wide appeal. EDIA is built to deliver results at scale. Visit edia.app/contact to learn how we lead with impact. And Liz, that is?
edia.app/contact.
Usually you spell it.
I was just getting there.
Okay.
edia.app/contact.
No one reads a URL like you do, Don.
I love it.
All right, Liz, we're going back in time.
We are.
Yeah. So this is actually a story from April of 2025 when our office was not so warm. They turned off the AC and we're in that in-between time in the Northeast. So if you see a bead of sweat come off of Liz's forehead in that lovely knit sweater you're wearing,
I'm very inappropriately
9,000 degrees in that thing.
I'm so hot.
Nonetheless, so going back, you can just think about April 2025. I'm sure it was freezing out.
I was in Ireland during this.
Oh, perfect. Knitting that sweater. So
No.
this is going back to April, but it's a story that I had flagged, and as the new academic year gets rolling, I thought was really interesting. So this is from ARXIV. It's a preprint. There's a whole mess of authors that Liz will be happy to tell you who their names are. And the story is really about, the piece is really about how, especially in higher ed, because we have lots of higher ed listeners, but I think this is true in high schools as well, the communities, like the peer-to-peer communities that happen online and in person in coffee shops, but in Discord, in Slack channels, in boards on learning management systems, are starting to go like a little crickets in the world of AI. So tell us about what is the author, who are the authors, what's the study? Get us in the mix here, Doc.
All right, I'm going to do my best to read these names, but I apologize if I mess any of them up. So Irene Howe, Owen Mann, Kate Hamilton, Srishti Methusekaran.
What would make you think you would mess that up?
I don't know.
It should roll right off your tongue.
Jeffin Johnny Cuddy, Layli Zadeh, and Stephen McNeil. And the title is All Roads Lead to ChatGPT, How Generative AI is Eroding Social Interactions and Student Learning Communities. So this study explored how generative AI, particularly tools like ChatGPT, is reshaping the peer-to-peer dynamics and student communities in computing education. So there were 17 in-depth interviews with undergraduates from 7 R1 universities in North America. So these are like the highest level of research universities.
Gotcha.
The researchers found that AI is not just a help tool, it's becoming a social intermediary that is displacing peer collaboration.
And this is mostly computer science, I believe, right?
Yeah, I did say computer science majors.
There you go. Sorry.
So, or computing education. So, so this made me think a lot about being a student in the late 90s, early 2000s. Like there were peer study groups and, just that casual like interaction in class, right after class, while you're getting ready to study or solve a problem or have your friend read your paper before you hand it in.
Yep.
And it seems like because of generative AI, it's eroding that relationship because AI is becoming the default gateway to peer-to-peer help, and it's often replacing meaningful social interaction with AI media exchanges.
First one's kind of fascinating because it's in some cases, these are some kids who are not using AI, but a question's posed, one of their peers used ChatGPT to respond, and they are thereby ingesting.
Yeah. I mean, both of these quotes are so interesting. So even if I don't use it, I definitely still indirectly use it. They just give me what they got out of ChatGPT, which is why I say, like, even though I haven't personally used it, I feel like it's inevitable. Yeah. And another student said, sometimes peers, would ask me a question and I would ChatGPT it and give it back. And they're like, thank you, you helped me so much. And I'm like, I did nothing. It's such a thing now.
This may be more true in computer science, but sometimes there's like a shared burden. Like we have this really hard problem. And so as like peer to peer, we're trying to struggle our way through it. And AI is evaporating that a little bit, right?
That loss of like shared struggle, spontaneous collaboration, emotional support is making the learning experience feel more transactional and less fulfilling. So, a student said that camaraderie because you're both suffering in the assignment. Most of the time, if ChatGPT has been able to solve it, then we're not going to ask our friends. And then another student said, if I'm relying more on ChatGPT, I might be more isolated in my room instead of having to go out and talk to people. This all just makes me so sad because so much of college is so fun, but it's also fun because you are struggling through those assignments together and you're studying for stuff together. And, we talked last week, maybe it was last week, and I said but if your teachers aren't available, it's great to have ChatGPT because you can just go get the answers. And I was like, oh, but in college, your peers are there. And I wish that kids would continue to do this. And actually, I'm thinking about some work that I did in Philly. There was a lot of research around how students did in Calculus 1 based on how they interacted with their peers. And this was obviously all pre-ChatGPT. This was in the early 2000s. And Uri Triesman did a lot of this work around race and collaboration and success in calculus. And because different cultural groups interacted differently around calculus and learning. And when they were more collaborative instead of competitive, students were doing better. And so now to lose this whole piece of it is really isolating.
Yeah, that's such an interesting intersection because some of it's about the diversity of perspectives, which comes from background and also just where you learned and, what high school you came from. So there's this phenomena that's going on where rather than generating alternative approaches and fostering debate because people are coming at this from different perspectives, generative AI tends, unless you kind of coach it to give you a diversity of perspectives, it tends to kind of give you one definitive solution. So students see this as diminishing, or it may have the effect of diminishing creativity and collaboration. I think there's students even reflected that a bit in the study.
Yeah, I love this. It can't give you the different style of programming that humans have. AI will only give you the Times New Roman right. And people will give you handwriting.
Yeah, that's good.
And I loved that. So I feel like I want to steal that sentence in training.
As well you should.
I will. Thank you, P11 first year CS.
I love P11. He's such a good guy or good gal. Yeah, some of it's about not just the kind of direct peer-to-peer, but I remember I would work with kids, I might have been a sophomore in the ed department and there was a senior, right? Because I did some of the stuff in my undergrad program. So some of it's mentorship, right? And we're losing a bit of that too. My mentor is now my chatbot, not this older senior who's really cool.
Right.
Who can also get me a beer in a bar.
Yeah,
you didn't have that experience.
I did not have that experience. But I did look up a lot to students that were older in my major, or just, you always want to find out from the seniors, who's the easy philosophy teacher, or who's the, what experience did you have with these professors, or which was a really cool class. And if they're just eroding that connection anyway, they might not even be asking. And they're probably going on to, again, websites to get that information, not actually having human-to-human conversation and just going to rate my professor instead.
Right.
It's all...
Or that new Grammarly tool. What was the tool you would put in your professor's name and then put in your essay and it would tell you based on the professor what the response would be.
Yeah.
Here's my mentor's name and tell me what my mentor would have said.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is, I don't want to be all glass half empty. This is a phenomena. The paper's a really interesting read. It's worth going back in time to review it. We'll put it into the show notes. And I'm not exactly sure how to solve it other than trying to bring really conscious awareness to it, structure environments where kids need to, maybe during longer blocks or just part of the grading and assessment. The weights are to make sure that students are in these kind of social fabrics and social relationships. So it's really about raising some awareness, but it does seem like there's a pretty profound impact. And it's notable, right? It's not just this anecdotal observation. If you literally look at the statistics of the usage of these conversation boards or Slack channels or Discord, it's they become ghost towns.
Right.
So I think that, folks in higher ed and again in high schools will probably need to bring a lot of intentionality back to these social learning contexts and mentorship contexts because they're critical. It's great to recognize that AI is hollowing out this piece of the learning enterprise, but that it's not okay, no worries, move on. This needs to be dialed back in some purposeful way.
Yeah.
That's me on a soapbox. What do you think?
Yeah. I think you do that through requiring group work. And I think back to the pandemic when we designed PIP, how intentional we were about so many activities requiring kids to get feedback from either a peer or even if it was just a family member in your house. We wanted kids reaching out to other humans to get feedback and not, obviously it was pre-ChatGPT, but many of those activities now, they could theoretically feed their slide deck to ChatGPT and get feedback, but we built in that they had to get feedback from a peer, from a teacher. And I feel like we're back to that same thing, like building in opportunities and forcing collaboration because kids aren't doing it naturally.
Yep, love it. Speaking of PIP, what a great segue. Our colleague Cameron Audia is going to do a quick little house ad to tell folks about our PIP, our Personal Interest Project program, and get more information about that. Sometimes we forget that we have a 20-year legacy doing project-based learning because we're so busy on the AI front, but PIP is a really nice intersection between generative AI and personal interest projects, something near and dear to your heart. Do we have a book release date yet?
November 13th.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow, we're going to do something cool on air about this?
I hope so.
On air, quote unquote.
I hope so.
Fantastic.
Hey, I'm Cameron Audia, executive producer of ChatEDU. As you likely know, Matt and Liz believe personal interest projects, or PIPs, are one of the best ways to help students bring agency and intellect to learning in the AI era. They also see PIP as a safe, ethical, and powerful way for students to master AI. If you'd like to learn about Skills 21's very own personal interest project platform and curriculum, check out skills21.org/PIP. And if you'd like to chat about PIP in real time, email Liz at chatedu@edadvance.org. I mean, after all, she wrote a book about it.
Nice. Thanks, Cam. And as a reminder, the fall, you look like you're about to die over there. If you're watching on Spotify or YouTube, take a look, as Liz has just basically given up. So I do want to remind folks that the fall micro-credential is open. We don't start, Liz, until October 7th?
I originally said 7th, but I think it's the 13th.
Oh, wow. It's getting later by the day. So plenty of time still to register. Come join us for the fall AI educator and school and district leader micro-credential. We are really looking forward to that. Liz and I are actively doing updates to the course, and we'll be doing quite a few. Should mention that folks who have taken the micro-credential, many of whom are in the ChatEDU listing audience, always have access to the course platform. And so anything that we update and add, we're adding some new stuff on agents. We're adding new stuff on, actually, we're about to talk about this new literacy tool from Google and Stanford Accelerator. So yeah, all that stuff is available to you if you log back in. We could probably even do like a little email saying, hey, well, here's what's new. Come take a look.
Wouldn't that be nice?
That would be nice.
Sounds like a problem you've just put on my plate. When he says we, he means Liz.
And this is actually my job description. All right, so Liz, it's time to do something, not roll the credits.
No, it's time to go beneath the surface. And talk about AI literacy learning scenarios.
Fantastic. So we're going to run through a couple different new resources that we think folks in the ChatEDU listening audience will be interested in, including, though, really what kicked this off was a really interesting opinion piece, which I kind of put third in the rundown here, about measurement, right? So there's a huge amount of emphasis on AI literacy. We hear it from the White House. We're seeing it all across the globe. Different countries are trying to do this in different ways, but there's not a lot of continuity yet on standards, as well as measurement, right? So we want to talk a little bit about that. But let's start with some examples. So the good folks at Teach AI, where you can find all their work at teachai.org/AI literacy. This is the organization that's done tons of cool work, including a great toolkit for schools. But they, in partnership with Code.org and OECD, have been kind of sharing and circulating and democratizing this very nice resource. And they came up with these new things, which are scenarios. So there's a PDF now that's kind of a series of, actually it starts as PowerPoint, I think I converted it. So these are AI literacy activities or scenarios for grades 6 through 12. They're designed to fit into 40-minute lessons. Each scenario is tied to a specific subject, includes clear learning objectives, suggested tools, and discussion reflection questions. Activities span subjects like language arts, social studies, math, science, and art. The focus is on helping students understand both how AI works and its ethical, social, and technical implications. So we pulled an example here. You want to kind of walk us through this a bit?
Yeah, so this is a humanities example called History with AI, so probably fits into a social studies class or some sort of history class. So the learning objectives are to summarize an article using an AI tool and then check the reliability of the sources used by the tool. So first, students would copy and paste a short historical article or excerpt into the AI chatbot. The students select 1 to 2 sources the AI cites and investigate, is this a real person, article, or document? Is it a primary or secondary source? Can I find the original or a reputable mention, and then they engage in class discussion based on some prompts.
You know what would have been a cool reference point for them?
The Newfoundland and Labrador study.
All 412 pages. The context window is huge. It could handle the whole thing.
Good. So, students would reflect on, did the AI give accurate information about the sources? Why is it important to double check what AI tells you? What could go wrong if someone blindly trusted AI-generated sources?
God, what could go wrong?
Hint, hint, you end up on the front page. This is a pretty basic assignment as far as just, learning how to double check and verify sources when you have AI summarize articles.
Yeah, but what I like about it, and there's a whole variety of stuff. Like there's stuff on prompting and there's stuff on bias. But, it goes to the point that very often schools will say, oh, AI literacy, what do I do? And then they buy a 3-year contract to a wrapper, Brisk, School AI, Magic School, whatever the case may be. And then they have, quote unquote, solved AI literacy because now students can chat with a historical figure, rewrite, an essay based on a teacher's prompt, or chat with someone in the Giver, right?
Right.
All of which are great, but may not necessarily reflect AI literacy.
Right. It reflects
broadly.
AI usage, but not necessarily literacy.
Yeah, and probably not even prompting too, right? At some level.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Great. Now, a second resource that came out just this last week, September 9th, this is from Google, and I believe it's Google and the Stanford Accelerator. Yeah, really cool. This thing called AI Quest. This reminded me so much of the Bright Byte stuff we do, and also Beyond the Bot. We have some little terms here, but where students are exploring how AI can be used to solve really kind of deep and meaningful problems. So if we think of the Stanford Accelerator story or many that we've covered, this is like this cool intersection. So tell us about this one.
Yeah, so Google Research and the Stanford Accelerator for Learning have launched AI Quests, a game-based learning platform designed to teach AI literacy to students aged 11 to 14. So that's really that middle school time.
So we got a mostly high school resource here and now a middle school resource. And in this case, one that's kind of screen-based and pretty interactive.
Yeah, so this is cool. So through fantasy-themed quests rooted in real-world challenges like flood prediction, diabetic retinopathy detection, and brain mapping, students learn AI fundamentals by collecting data, training models, and making decisions that impact outcomes. So each quest includes a teacher guide with pre- and post-game activities, encouraging reflection and formative learning, though there's not a formal assessment tool or metric for measuring AI literacy development. So AI Quests is being integrated into global curricula like Experience AI, and again, free for educators.
Yep, it's going to be also integrated into both our student-facing AI course as well as our teacher and school leader-facing micro-credential, because it's a really cool example. Just like you used, what's the machine learning one? Oh, QuickDraw.
QuickDraw, yeah.
Yeah, some of these are just like really very practical examples of important parts of AI literacy that often get overlooked. But what kicked this whole thing off was an opinion piece about schools and AI literacy, especially around measurement. So tell us about this.
So this is Amit Sevak, the CEO of ETS, which is the Educational Testing Service, argues that AI literacy is becoming essential, but education systems still lack a consistent way to define and measure it. So he is calling for a framework that goes beyond just tool usage to include technical fluency, ethical reasoning, critical thinking, real-world application. All these skills like writing prompts and spotting bias and knowing when to trust AI, they all need to be measured. And without shared definitions first and assessments, schools risk uneven instruction and deepening inequities. So Sevak points to a growing gap between perceived and actual AI readiness. So in the 2025 ETS Human Progress Report, 55% of managers believe their employees are AI proficient, but only 43% of employees agree. So this underscores the dangers of assuming competence without measurement. He urges leaders to adopt working definitions, like from maybe Teach AI, embed assessment into curriculum, and standardize expectations to ensure students are truly prepared. So all really important because it's true. Like if we can't measure it, it's not as helpful.
For all sorts of reasons, to be able to give kids feedback, to measure growth, to assure competence, all that stuff.
Effectiveness.
Yeah. Now, I thought it was interesting because here Dr. Rade just said that, and she is the author of a student AI literacy course. And it's interesting because we thought a lot about the inputs, right? We crosswalked, you crosswalked. We have 5 modules. We can walk through what they are a little bit on the course that you've built. But we also need to think a little bit about measurement and literacy. Now, you do that mostly through reflections, and also there's a lot of like chatbot interactions that teachers can track and measure. I think you do a pre-post as well.
We do a pre-post for in all of our courses, student-facing, teacher-facing, nonprofit-facing, because we do want to know. But all of that is pretty opinion-based. Right?
And global too, right? So I think it is a reminder. I basically said, I put this into the mix so I could just look Liz across the table and say, what are we doing about measurement?
Yeah.
You see a theme emerging here?
I do.
But let's talk a little bit about it. So, because you have a really interesting rubric. So there are 5 modules in the course, right? What is AI and where is it headed, right? Risks in AI, so everything from bias and hallucinations, deep fakes, and certainly you just built a really nice activity for students on AI companionships. Then there is some skill-based stuff, like prompting pros, right? Zero-shot and multi-shot prompting, all sorts of stuff, deep
Which
research.
we now call
guided direct prompts and guided prompts, right? Exactly. So things on prompting. There is a optional module 4 around Gemini for schools that are using Gemini. So that's also building some fluency around tool use, although it's tool use then in the context of the work that they did around prompting, right? So there's very little like interactive chatbot conversation here stuff. This is more like, how do I use AI as a clerk, a colleague, as a coach? And then you did a really nice 5th module, AI in your future, which is understanding AI across different kind of industries and sectors in civil society. Kind of stuff about AI in jobs. I love you did a really cool activity called Old Jobs, New Jobs, where the custom chatbot does some analysis around radiologist or bookkeeper or customer support agent and what the impacts are there, and then one on AI in your future. So I know this is a work in progress, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but how are you thinking about, there's a bunch of skills, there's a bunch of discrete activities. How are you thinking about, measurement, feedback, and the like?
Because teachers are using this in their own context. So we didn't want to tell them this is worth 10 points, this is worth 15, or give them a lot of specific rubrics, because we want them to assess. And what we want is for students to reflect a lot. We really just want students thinking about this. And I think reading the reflections is one of the ways that we're going to get at what students are thinking about these tools and what they're learning, especially in the difference you see between a guided prompt and a direct prompt. Like a guided prompt gets you such better information rather than saying write me an email versus that's a direct prompt versus write me an email. Here's 3 examples of my own emails. It obviously gets better. That's the guided one. So we want to see that kids are recognizing that. Mm-hmm. And then we want to see, hopefully, that students are using that in their actual work when they are going to Gemini.
Right. That's a really cool crossover, right? And not all. I think we've talked to, maybe 7 or 8 districts so far about the course. Interestingly, I was going to think 2 of them were going to be using Gemini for their kids. Almost all of them are, which is kind of neat. So they recognize the need to have an open frontier model that is not sort of a sandbox with lots of guardrails, but that students need to understand exactly as you described, what's a direct prompt versus a prompt with examples. Or even, and I think this is some new stuff that we'll do stretching around, a prompt where you just say, hey, make me something, like a clerk prompt, rather than a prompt where you're saying, can you help me troubleshoot this challenge and help me work through it? Because if you hearken back to the Stanford study, Canaries, that we covered a little while ago, there is this really fascinating bit around augmentative prompts, so prompts where people are using AI as a colleague or a coach to problem solve or grow, versus clerk prompts, right?
Right.
Clerk prompts is sort of not dead-end jobs. It intersects with the last module, but these augmentative prompts, certainly appear to have a whole lot of durability in a career pathway. So getting students to how do we get a kid from who's in 8th grade to begin to understand that?
Yeah, I'm also just so excited to read all the stuff where they talk about AI in their future and understanding careers and what they are thinking. And are they understanding? Talking to 8th graders about careers is so difficult because they're 14 and I have a 14-year-old and she's like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what classes I want to take tomorrow. She was talking just recently about, she's in honors algebra right now, but so that means she wouldn't actually get to calculus. So we were talking about the option of taking 2 maths next year. And she's like, I'm going to go home and talk to daddy about it. I'm like, we're in the 3rd week of school. We do not need to decide your sophomore year schedule today, September 15th.
But what's cool about this moment in time for even your daughter in 8th grade is that there's an awareness that these kids have about AI and its potential impact on careers. I think the whole work that schools do around career exploration is going to have a new urgency and lens, because there is a collective known out there that, this AI thing is having an impact on jobs and skills and pathways. So I'm hoping there'll be some investment. So I don't know, maybe next week you could have that conversation.
Yeah, maybe next week.
Okay. All right. So for you, Liz, the frame right now is reflections as a way of thinking about measurement, as well as pre-posts.
Yeah.
And we'll see, we may become more nuanced in that. This course does not do something that's interesting, which is have students, make lots of physical artifacts or digital artifacts demonstrating mastery of a particular skill. That would be, you sort of have an artifact in the chat bot interactions, and and the teachers can see those. But we'll see, over time, maybe there will be artifacts where they're going to go, okay, well, here is my career plan and I can measure that. But we're starting mostly around pre-post and reflections, which interestingly, the Teach AI scenarios was essentially the same thing. It was kind of reflection based.
Yeah. And with our course will come a teacher guide where we can build in some of these, for further exploration. If you do want to have kids do an artifact, it wouldn't be on our platform, but here's what could be next. So we want to have a lot of opportunities for teachers to have guided group discussions or small group discussions, because again, we want to get them off of the computers to talk about what they've just done.
Right.
So opportunities for full class or small group discussions. And then maybe there are some artifacts that teachers do want to dive deeper into. And a lot of it depends on how you're implementing this course. If you're doing it in advisory where there isn't a high stakes grade and you only do have 20 minutes at a time, that may be different than if it's part of a trimester course in middle school where you have a whole trimester to do this, and it would make sense to do some deeper dives and do some bigger projects.
Yeah, which again, our data sample is not huge, but it's been interesting, just this conversation with schools about, because the course is kind of letting us have some insight into how are you thinking about creating assured experiences for all kids around AI literacy. And so because there is a real kind of, I think, consensus frame that it needs to be an assured experience, most of the schools we've talked about, they are thinking about it first, at least, as a thing that's going to go, as you said, into a trimester course that all kids will take, or whatever their version of that is.
Yeah.
So yeah, really
easier to do in middle school and not high school,
because the course catalog is not, the course of study is not as constrained.
Right.
A little more flexibility.
More flexibility in middle school. And so that is something that high schools are thinking about, especially in this moment, they're juniors and seniors, because they may not have time to take a whole course, and they probably don't have time to take a whole course. And so where does it fit so that these kids are ready to go off to college or off to career, because they don't have the same amount of time as freshmen do. So I know that
a lot of freshman seminar conversations.
Yes. Yeah. Both of my daughters. So my junior daughter took freshman seminar, but obviously 2 years ago, my current freshman daughter is in freshman seminar, and they do a lot of career exploration, not much on AI yet, but we'll see.
I can't believe I said 8th grader.
She's a freshman.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Tilia, I apologize. Okay, cool. So neat stuff. And thanks for letting us pick your brain. Kind of on the spot, too. I was not quite sure how you're going to react to that. So 3 resources really to think about. The Teach AI kind of scenarios, the new really cool Quest. It reminds me of WebQuest, which is so funny.
I know.
Are you old enough to remember WebQuest?
I'm old enough to have written web quests for students.
Oh, that makes me feel like such affinity with you. Yeah, so the Teach AI resource, the new tool from Google and the Stanford Accelerator on Quest, and this very interesting opinion piece about the importance of measuring AI literacy. And then, of course, our conversation with Dr. Elizabeth Rade about her new student-facing AI course. Good stuff, Doc.
Yeah, and we'll make sure to put that stuff in the show notes so that you know how to get to those AI quests and different things.
Absolutely. Dude, Justin Pascoe, who is our kind of co-executive producer, what is his title? He helps make stuff happen. So he helps with the show notes. Because of the rundowns, those links are going long. But yeah, if you ever miss something, let us know. If we miss getting something into the show notes, let us know. Just email us at chatedu@edadvance.org, and we will make sure you can get access to the link. But we do our very best to make sure everything is there. Okay, Liz, it is now time for a
Bright Bite.
Yay! So Bright Bites are ways that AI is being used to make all sorts of purposeful contributions to society, culture, the environment, the economy, and the like. This one is Bright Bite adjacent, it's also entrepreneurial, and it's really cool. I don't know if you saw this in the news generally. So there was a group at Stanford. Stanford. There was a group at MIT.
Apologize to MIT.
Yeah. Well, Stanford could have had him, and those kids went to Boston instead of San Jose or San something. So, oh boy, it is warm. I'm going to blame it on the heat. So, this group out of MIT spun off, and they have a new product called Alter Ego. This was published in Descript, but you may have seen it a few different places. So this is like Neuralink, but without actually, I just hate saying this, but drilling a hole in someone's skull and then implanting something in their brain. So this is kind of a wearable device for near telepathic wearable that lets you communicate silently with devices. Did you check this out?
I did not watch the video, but I was pretty interested. I mean, it's this like, the uses are for accessibility. So, right.
Well, there's all sorts of stuff. So this is a Boston startup called Alter Ego. They've launched a wearable that basically enables silent communication with machines by decoding neuromuscular signals in the throat and jaw. So it's built at the lab, as we said, spun off, uses machine learning to translate subvocal speech, which I had to think a lot about today. I was like, what's the difference between my thought and my thought when I'm going to say something? So they put it into commands with audio feedback delivered via bone conduction. So it's positioned as a non-invasive alternative to brain implants, as we said, like Neuralink. So this is the first group of folks that they're going to give access to this are people with MS and ALS. My dad passed of ALS, and the chapter of his disease where his speech was impacted, the whole thing is pretty rough. If anyone has been through that, they certainly understand. But yeah, if he had the ability to be able to have his thoughts translate into spoken word, it would be pretty cool. So yeah, this is a really interesting piece. There's a quick little video, but it's not really made for podcasting. We'll drop it into the show notes. But essentially what happens here is you watch this young man kind of having a thought, and then that thought is transmitted essentially directly. So yeah. Pretty wild stuff. So that is Alter Ego from this MIT spin out. And again, kind of an interesting, one part bright bite, certainly one part entrepreneurship as well.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I love that so much of AI is, and all this technology is being used to bring accessibility to people with disabilities and just, the unlock it has for people who struggle with different things.
All right, so you have two use cases, Liz. You've got the Aura therapist inside your Tesla, and you have Alter Ego. I'm feeling like you're sliding your chips into the Alter Ego bucket.
Oh, God, I don't know. It's all, I mean, as cool
really?
as it is.
I mean, that seemed like the biggest softball I'd ever thrown you.
I don't want to slide all my chips anywhere.
You just want a Tesla.
No, not really.
Okay, Liz. This is, given the heat in here, it's got to be time to
roll the credits.
As always, we'd love to hear what you think. So please let us know at chatedu@edadvance.org. That's EDADVANCE.org. And also rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you are using. ChatEDU is brought to you by EdAdvance, the nonprofit regional education service center in Litchfield, Connecticut. This episode of ChatEDU is sponsored by the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing. ChatEDU is recorded, edited, and produced by Andre Angelo and Justin Pasco, whose dedication and expertise bring our discussions to life. ChatEDU's executive producer is the multi-talented rock star Cameron Audia. Additionally, we are grateful for the support of our colleague Gary Robinson, and we appreciate his time and talents. And of course, a big ChatEDU shout out to our fearless leader and executive director, Jonathan Costa, for inspiring the pod. And finally, a heartfelt thank you to our listeners for joining us on this journey exploring the thoughtful and innovative integration of AI in education.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Costa, and I am the executive director at EdAdvance, and I want you to know how much we appreciate our listeners. If you enjoyed the podcast, feel free to explore EdAdvance's other AI services, which include customized professional learning of all kinds, conferences, and our micro-credential co-sponsored by the Southern Connecticut State University Office of Workforce and Lifelong Learning. Just visit skills21.org/AI to learn more. That's all for now, and thank you again for listening to ChatEDU.